For some expert analysis on Telkom's numbers, we are now joined by Farai Mapfinya, who is the head of equities and portfolio manager at JM Busha Asset Managers. Farai, thank you for making the time to join us. Let's quickly talk about that proposed collaboration with MTN, that super roaming agreement, as Sipho Maseko calls it. Is this significant? Is this going to be a game change of sorts for Telkom, and what does it mean for MTN?
I think it is significant. I think it's also one of the key features which came out through the results. If you look at the Telkom mobile capital expenditure that they rolled out in this half, they only spent about 160 odd million rand. Just to take that into comparison with the like of Vodacom, they've got a budget of about 5 billion rand. So I think they have already scaled back quite aggressively with the hope that this roaming agreement with MTN will be finalized without any competition, commutation hurdles. And then also the radio access network, which they want to outsource wholly to MTN. So I think it will have a significant impact on the cost and then consequently on the profitability of Telkom as a whole.
I look at Vodacom and I look at Neotel, I look at Telkom and I look at MTN, and I look at the botched Korean deal, potential Korean deal, what was it, 2 years ago now, and I say to myself, these numbers are great. What have we got here? Revenue 13.3 billion, up 1.6%, something like that. But the strategic significance of Telkom and their strategic future is the big picture for me. What do you think? Do you think that there's something bigger going on behind the scenes? I mean, the share price is 64 Rand. It was 13, 14, not that long ago.
Yeah, there could be something bigger going on in the background. I think at the time, the reasons that government gave, well, not explicitly, was that they want to roll out broadband to the masses, and Telkom will be the backbone for that broadband rollout. And we've subsequently seen there is some issues with regards to spectrum allocation. That hasn't been finalized, and one just wonders what the reasons are in terms of not finalizing that. So it could be a case where government saying that they actually want to roll out that spectrum allocation and possibly give a big chunk to Telkom for sort of social development in terms of broadband rollout and infrastructure. So I think there could be something brewing in the background, Lindsay.
David?
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Telkom.
Yes.
Talking to Sunil just last week, he said there'll probably be off air, and I don't want to say on air, but that there'll probably be only 2 operators in a few years, the
yes.
MTNs and Vodacoms. But reconciling their numbers, they actually made most of their profits from actually selling instruments,
yes.
cell phones. Yeah. And I try to reconcile also from termination fees, in other words, they're paying less to competitors, yes. and then also from benefits. So if you take those 3 numbers, that's where they made their money. Yeah. Nothing at the top line. Where are they going to make top line?
Yeah, that's actually a concern of ours, David. If you look at well, you can actually break Telkom into the small various components. So it's a fixed line voice, and that's been in decline, call it over the last 10 years. And then there's fixed line data. That grew up marginally, I think about 8% growth in the ADSL subscribers. So that also did well, but it won't offset the decline in voice to a large extent. And then there's Telkom Mobile, where obviously the number in percentage terms was good, but they're coming off a very, very low base, just hitting 2 million subscribers now, which is minute compared to the big players, Vodacom and MTN. So I think there are some significant operational headwinds, which is actually why we don't actually like the business that much.
I'm just going to say quickly out of that, do you think the share price has hit probably the limits?
Well, I think the share price can go anywhere. Price is what you pay and value is what you get. In terms of the value, we actually don't see much value in terms of upside in terms of Telkom. It's trading at, call it 12 times forward, which is at a huge premium in terms of its own history. It's obviously cheaper than the market, but it's never traded higher than that multiple if you look at it historically.
And then, of course, we're seeing Sipho trying to trim the internal fat and the excesses. I mean, they let go of about $29 million in totality when it comes to those severance packages. Yes. Do you think a leaner Telkom, a leaner machine with the trimmed down management, because I understand that's the layer that actually went, might actually translate into improved efficiencies? I'm trying to make sense of this big dent that they've had in their books on the back of this.
Yeah, I think it comes back to David's point that there is nothing happening at the top line. So in terms of profitability, you will see good numbers coming in. So that will come from sort of normal write-offs, contingent liability in terms of medical aid, cutting off staff and the like. So they are improving that EBITDA line, but from the bottom, which is probably the other way around of getting there. In terms of the costs, yes, there is some bit of fat. If you compare their employees to cost revenue, Vodacom is sitting at about 5%, MTN just below 6%, and Telkom is north of 20%.
Sure.
So you can actually make your own mind from that. We obviously don't expect it to fall as much as to say call it 5-6%, because obviously they've got different structures. If you are servicing the last mile section, which is why Lindsay hasn't received anybody coming to fix his phone line yet, it's a different ballgame to servicing a base station, which is broadcasting to a lot of people. So that can come down, but not as much as the comparable operators like Vodacom and MTN.
Farai, just last question for me. Thanks for mentioning my service problems, but it's quite sad, isn't it? I don't want to end on a sad note, but a dozen years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago, when South Africa was the biggest economy on the African continent, Telkom had the opportunity to be the biggest telecommunications company on that continent. It just didn't grab it, whether it was layers of bureaucracy, whether it was inefficiency or the nimbleness of other companies. We just didn't do it, or rather it didn't do it. Yes. Is it too late to change that and turn it around?
Lindsay, one hopes not, but I think it's probably a classical case of if you manage things badly for a long time, then you probably pay a huge cost for that, and it will be actually very difficult. To be quite frank, I think Telkom was managed badly for a period when Sizwe Ngasana left. I think for a long time it was managed quite badly. So for him to turn around this, it's probably, call it 5-6 years late. So, for example, they say they want to roll out fiber to the home. Why they didn't do it 5 years ago is a mystery. If they had taken that step, call it 5-7 years ago, they would probably be the leading player there, and they actually wouldn't have to compete directly with Vodacom. Because what's happening now is they are pretty much on the same footing with the other operators like Vodacom and MTN, and they've got no scale or competitive advantage to speak of. So I think it's an opportunity cost lost. So yeah, if you manage things badly and they go way out of control and you can't.
Well, on that note of lost opportunities, we say a very big thank you to Farai Mapfinya. He's from JM Busha Asset Managers.